everyone. My name is Artur, and thank you so much for being part of this event with us. I'm speaking on behalf of the organizers of the Ars Antica Colóquio, the first one of many. And I firstly appreciate so much the opportunity to coordinate this table. So this table has some specificities. First of all, it was organized by Professor Danila Maslov. He's a professor of, he's an invited professor of our Federal University of Ouro Preto, and it will work as such. Firstly, two students of his discipline of manuscript studies will talk about his and her impression of the discipline and their work with manuscripts very briefly. Afterwards, we'll have other speakers. So I will introduce each one as they come along. And firstly, I have the pleasure of introducing Eduarda Thompson. She has been a student of our Federal University of Ouro Preto, and she's been studying Horace under the supervision of Professor Alexandre Agnolon. And now she will talk to us about her experiences with some manuscript studies. Thank you very much, Eduarda. Please.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to speak very briefly about the classes that I had with Danila. It's not my first main studies, so I'm just going to talk about the general experience. The classes we had, we used a lot of manuscripts, medieval manuscripts, and made we just transcribe them and translate it and try to understand some bits of it. It was mainly comments on Aristotle's, some of the metaphysics, and it was a very different experience, I have to say, because I never had contact with this kind of manuscripts. It was the first time that I was seeing manuscript, and it is very, very different it is a very different experience because it's very difficult to read the first few. We started with some easier manuscripts to read, was more clearer to read them, and as the classes advanced, we had a few more that was kind of harder to read. It was not in good condition. Some was ripped apart, and it was a fun challenge, I think. Learning about the abbreviations was something that I always wanted to learn, but we didn't have the opportunity yet. And well, it was a very, very pleasant experience that we had. And in the final work, the paper that I did, I transcribed one work of Dinsdale and tried to make a translation to English, even though it's not my first language, so it was kind of hard for me. But I think I did a good job. I don't know, but I tried my best, at least. And I tried to understand some bits of it, even though it's kind of hard because my main area, it's like poetry. Like Artur said, my studies, I study Horace. In poetry is very different from this kind of texts, because the Latin is not, it's different. It has a lot of repetitions throughout the text. And so it was kind of hard to transcribe it because of the abbreviations in the Latin. But it was a very good experience to have these classes with Danila. I think I've learned a lot, especially in the parts of learning and reading the manuscript and trying to understand what the commenters said about Aristotle's. Well, I'm gonna just give this general view of the classes, because it's not my experience, so I cannot say a lot of the text in general. So I'm just gonna leave it there and let others speak more about it.
Okay, thank you very much, very much, Eduardo, for your telling of your experience with this new experience with manuscripts. We all thank you very much, and I would like to call now William Passarini. If could be. Hello, good morning, William. Nice to meet you. And William, he's a member of the Faculty of Philology of the University of Coimbra. He's a collaborator there, and he studies at the Lyceum Institute. And he will also give us our impressions about the manuscript of question commentaries on Aristotle. So please, William.
Yes, hello, good morning. I am sending my PowerPoint presentation, but okay, nice, perfect. So hello, good morning. I would like to give thanks to Dr. Maslov for the invitation. I would like to give thanks to the organizers and my colleagues here present, Stephanie and Eduardo. Thank you so much. So I'm going to speak very briefly for about 10 minutes about my experience with Dr. Maslov's course. So how can I move to the next image here? Okay, nice. So first, what drew me into Dr. Maslov's course was the title, because the first course was titled Medieval Semiotics. And I've been studying semiotics for a couple of years now, and some late scholastic authors, and they usually don't go together. The semiotics from Peirce and the semiotics in medieval scholasticism, which is a pity, because Peirce read the scholastic, the medieval authors. Peirce was very much influenced by Duns Scotus, including and also the late medieval authors, for instance, the Conimbricenses. So when I heard this title, Medieval Semiotics, I was very much interested in this idea. Yeah, so my idea here is that reading and engaging with 13th century philosophical and logical manuscripts is crucial for understanding late medieval and modern semiotic concepts, because they provide context for later debates on signs, signification, and meaning. In my case, my work explores the intersection of semiotics, and by semiotics here I mean the Persian tradition, right, and medieval semiotics. So if we move on to slide, okay, nice. Now, during Dr. Maslov's course, we have seen, as Eduardo just mentioned, the influence of Aristotle, especially Aristotle's logical works, for instance, Perihermeneias, because these questions about signification, they often direct reference Aristotelian logic and terminology. But there is also implicit the role of St. Augustine. Augustine's definition of sign is foundational. According to Umberto Eco and the North American semiotician John Dilley, Augustine was the first one to unite under this notion of signum both the natural and cultural signs. So it was a progress in this discussion. But usually Augustine's definition of sign is usually restricted to what is present to our sense perception, and later medieval authors will expand Augustine's notion to include signs that are not present to our sense perception. They are going to call it formal signs. So let's move on to the next one. Okay. Now we have seen a certain prefiguration in the reading of these manuscripts, a certain prefiguration of the modern semantic triangle. Although there are differences, they're not the same, but I mean here the relationship. So in these questions that we have read, they usually focus on the relation between the sign, the concept, or sometimes called the species, and the thing signified. Although the concept and the species, or the species expressed in the case of John St. Thomas, it is also a sign, but that's the kind of sign they are going to call formal signs. Another interesting point that we have seen in the reading of these manuscripts, it was an interesting question where we discussed the notion of ens in signification and ens simpliciter. In my case, it was interesting because in late medieval authors, for instance, in the case of John of St. Thomas was influenced by the modist school. So they talk about the modus essendi, modus significandi, modus intelligendi. And in this case of the manuscript that we have read, it's not the modist, it was not a modist text, but there's something there, right? This idea of this difference between ens in signification and ens simpliciter. And the question I'm referring to is this one. Does man signifies two-footed animal, signification? Does it imply that man is a two-footed animal? Now, some insights from these authors, 13th century authors that we have read, like John Duns Scotus, John Dinsdale. Their works show the nascent debate on how a sign relates to the species, the mental image, and the object itself. And this kind of question, it sets the stage for later models that we are going to see in late medieval times. And today I'm going to focus on Michael of Brugger. So Michael of Brugger, he lived after John of St. Thomas. I'm not sure he studied under John of St. Thomas, but he read John of St. Thomas a lot, and he was influenced a lot by John of St. Thomas. So this is an example of a manuscript we have read under Dr. Maslov. This is the question that I mentioned, whether it says to whether names of first imposition signify things themselves or the likenesses of things, these species, images of things. Here it's another example. It's not it's very small in the slide, but the idea here is that it says whether it follows man signifies two-footed animal, therefore it is two-footed animal. And the first answer here is that it doesn't seem to be the case, because being signification is being secundum quid, and from this it doesn't follow being simpliciter. Now, just to make a comparison and close my presentation, I would like to talk about this book here by Michael of Brugger. Michael of Brugger was, I think I need to stop sharing this one to share the book, if anyone can help me. Okay, nice. So Michael of Brugger, he read a lot John of St. Thomas, and here now we are talking about the 17th century. So Michael Comas e Brugario, Michael of Brugger. And just to show you how studying the 13th century manuscripts can help understand late medieval texts. So we can see the same idea, the influence of Aristotle's book, logical books here. And then something interesting is that in the case of Michael of Brugger and John of St. Thomas, because, as I said, Michael of Brugger is a follower of John of St. Thomas, He starts his logical book with the notion of signs, and he says here that all logical instruments that we use to know and speak are signs. So in this case, logic is rooted in the notion of signs. And just to give the example of some questions, they discuss signs, they discuss objects, they actually, Michael Brugger, he also talks about the causality of signs. And here we will find a similar question relating the sign and the speeches and the object signified here, whether the sign by the same relation refers to the power or to the signified. So a different approach, actually, but the idea is the same, the same topic, the same theme. So let me remove this one and share the slide again to finish. Okay. So let me get there. So just to close, so these medieval authors, they talk a lot about the formal causality of signs, and it is something that is different from the Persian tradition, and something that medieval authors might shed light on this topic of causality of signs, because usually Percy, he talks about the final causality. He relates the causality of signs to final causality. And all these medieval authors, they are talking about this extrinsic formal causality of signs. So I think this is something medieval authors can contribute to the discussion. So to conclude, studying the evolution of medieval discussions provides a richer understanding of philosophical concepts often assumed to be modern. By comparing medieval semiotics with modern frameworks like Peirce, we reveal areas where medieval approaches offer unique clarity and theoretical depth. So thank you again, Dr. Maslov, for the opportunity, and thank you everyone for this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, William. It was a pleasure having you here. Nice to meet you. I hope we'll have the opportunity for you to come by in person soon in the future. Thank you so much. And now we'll have Stephanie Sander, if we can put her on. Yes, great. Welcome, Stephanie. And
hello.
Nice to meet you. And Stephanie, she's a PhD candidate at the Federal University of Santa Catarina. She's part of the interdisciplinary nucleus of medieval studies called Meridianum, and she has a scholarship from the Fundo de Amparo à Pesquisa e Inovação de Santa Catarina, FAPESC. And she will talk to us, she will present us her paper titled Christine de Pizan's Handwriting, Autographed Manuscripts of a Female Author in Medieval France. So please, Stephanie, the stage is yours.
Hello. I have my dog here, and she's a little bit in alarm mode, so if you hear her, I'm sorry. Cannot control him. Anyway, the presentation is the one I have. Yes, that's one. So just complementing what what Eduarda and William said, I thought the course Professor Danila gave us was really interesting. I'm the kind of person that loves manuscripts. I often go to the manuscript instead of going to modern editions or critical editions of some things. Some of my sources, I go straight to the manuscript just because I think it's interesting. And I think that kind of classes are lacking here in Brazil. We don't have that experience to see the manuscript and see how things worked back then. And I think that's very important. And I thought that class was really interesting. So thank you, Professor Danila. And thank you for the invitation to speak here. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the author of my sources of my thesis. I have oh dear Lord, I'm going to change this thing to the PDF here because again I cannot, to save my life, do a simple slide, a simple presentation that doesn't work. It has to be something more showy or something. How can I do this? Remove for studio and there, thank you. Now we have something a little bit better, and it didn't change the letters of it. Anyway, I studied Christine de Pizan. For those who don't know her, she was born in Venice, Italy, around 1364-65. She came to France, Paris, around her 4 or 5 year of age, because her father was invited to be part of Charles V, the King of France at the time, his council. She was not an ordinary author. One, she was a female person. She was educated back then. It's not that common. She made money out of her writings, and that's a little bit a novelty for the time. For those that are watching this, and if you have a little bit of difficulty with English, I have more or less the same presentation I'm doing here. I did about 3 years ago. It's on my Instagram. The title is Paleografando, and you can see there a little bit the same thing. Anyway, Christine de Pizan was a daughter of Tommaso da Pisano. He was a professor at Bologna University, and he went to Paris to be King Charles V counselor. She married Etienne du Castel. He was secretary of the chancellery of the kingdom, and she tells us in her own books that how she did all the things of learning, of how she started liking studying, how she started being herself after she lost her husband, her father, the king. Because in the decade of 1380, everybody died. The king died, her father died, her husband died in the decade of 1390. And she, instead of going to a monastery and be a nun, she decided to just write instead of the alternative that was nunnery. I'm not going to read everything, but she, in this passage, says that she got the little bits that she had from her father, and that was very important to her. There are evidence she read Latin. She had access to Charles V library, La Bibliothèque du Louvre, the Library of Louvre. And she was more than just a person that writes. She was the chef d'atelier, the person that controlled the production of her own books. She had at least 2 people with her, writing for her, actually doing the manual writing of her books. She was the one who said to the artist, paint a miniature like this, like that, and so on and so forth. She had that control. She had an atelier back then, and that was very rare. From her works overall survived about 200 manuscripts, a little bit more than that. From her atelier, it survived 54. It's a bestseller. It survived a lot. And of those 54, 27 were written by her hand, at least in part or in total. And that's very, very novelty for that time. She learned how to write with her father and with her husband. She has a very chancery-like handwriting. I'm going to speak a little bit more about that later. The other 2 persons that wrote for her, we have a few informations of it. We have hand P and hand R. P is named because of the P he wrote, that P that does a bow backwards. And he is found in other manuscripts that has no relation to Christine de Pizan's atelier. This P, this hand P tried to copy her way to write, but it's a little bit sloppy, is a little bit not as elegant as her handwriting, and I'm going to show you that. I'm getting into a little bit that deep paleography analysis, but I'm trying to not go too deep into this, because if I let go, I'll go. We have hand R. R comes from raide, rigide. It means hard, stiff, because it's a very straightforward, like the way people thought, learned how to write the chancery French writing. It's a very not that creative. It's very spaced. It's very that in that box. And then we have hand X, named hand X first because of the X always present when there was the name Christine in the manuscript. Christine is written like Christ in manuscripts, so it's right with X and P. There's a long story about that abbreviation. I'm not going into that detail here, but it's Christine, trust me. And hand X has also that, like for the flourish, you can see in image 1 here, the right side of the screen. And she always do that flourish. And I'm saying she because the scholars think that hand X is Christine de Pizan's herself, because that handwriting is in everywhere in the manuscripts that got out of her atelier, everywhere. She's either writing it, correcting something, editing something. She's always there. Although she doesn't mention anywhere in her works that she did the copies, because that wasn't a prestigious work at her time. She mentioned the artists she hired to decorate the manuscripts, but she never mentions the ones that actually do the writing. But she have that authorial feeling, the scholar says, and I do agree with them, in the manuscripts of her. She corrects P. Here you have the P handwriting. She corrects herself. She corrects R. Her hand is in the first two manuscripts that came from her atelier. That is Epitretea, and I don't remember the one that has here, but anyway. And she is in the last one. It's her handwriting, the last one that came out of her atelier. And we know of, we started thinking hand acts as Christine de Pisan's handwriting because of this piece of manuscripts you have here. It's a completely different handwriting than the first two that William showed you. Completely different. We are in the 1500s here, 1400s here, and I'm not going to translate everything here, but in blue, she's saying that this text was written by her hand. This text is made by my hand, made after 1 hour after midnight. And she is excusing herself that she is writing that because when she wrote it, there wasn't anyone else available to write it for her. And that's more or less what she writes here. And this is a piece of text that has nowhere else on the other copies of that work. It's a letter to the queen at the time, Isabeau de Bavière. And it's in the in the codex, that has nothing to do with Christine de Pisan. And that's why they think that's her. And among other arguments that if I stay here and speak, I'll stay all day. Anyway, I wanted to show you this because I think it's interesting to show you a little bit of how writing can be studied in the Middle Ages. And again, I thank you for the opportunity. If you let me, I will speak more than just the 20 minutes. And, well, that's it. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, for this lovely and very beautiful presentation, likewise. And I hope we will have the opportunity to welcome you here in person soon in the future. And now we'll have the final presentation of our roundtable by Arina Simonian.
Hello, do you hear me?
Hello, Arina. Yes, we hear you.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting to this conference. It is an honor for me to be here and to share my ideas, experiences with you. But I have some problems with my presentation. It is still uploading. And what should we do? I don't know.
Oh, I see. Let's see. Let's wait further instructions. But while we wait, Mateus, one of our helpers, is saying that it's already uploaded here. So I'm assuming that he can, just like present it, and then you can inform him when you want to change the pages or whatever you need. Okay.
Or maybe I can share my screen. Is it possible?
I don't know, Mateus. Can you put for us? See, it's there. Are you seeing it, Arina?
No.
No, but we are seeing it. It is a quite beautiful picture of a scriptorium.
Oh.
And,
how can we do it technically? Oh.
But can you? But let me ask you, Arina. So are you in the link? Can you see me, for example?
Yes, I can see you. But
that's weird that you cannot see the presentation then.
Yes, it's a problem. I can't see my presentation, but I see you very well and hear also.
Mateus and the others are trying other strategies. Perhaps if let me see if I can. Since you can see me, maybe if I present, if I share my screen. Maybe you'll be able to see your own presentation. Let's see. Yeah. Maybe it didn't work. Anyway, but Elena, one of our helpers, is trying to solve the problem. Meanwhile, I will introduce you formally. Okay, so Arina Simonian, she's a PhD candidate at the Institute of Philosophy in the Russian Academy of Science. And on the year of 2023, she was awarded the Jacqueline Hames Award for an article that she wrote originally in German, whose translation to English, the title of the article is An Eckhart Quotation as a Locus Communis in the Context of a Mystical Explanation of the Mass. And today she will speak to us, and she gave us a paper whose title is Philosophical Text in the Context of Medieval Book Culture, Case Studies, the Anonymous German Treatise on the Sacrament. So let's see if we can solve this problem that she cannot see her slides. But Arina, I have a suggestion. If you still cannot see it, you still have your slides with you there, right? In your computer with you. So what you can do is that, because we also have your presentation, so you can talk about what you need and ask to show, can you pass to the second page, third page, and things like that, and we'll follow you along.
Okay. Then. Good. Then I open my presentation on my computer and one moment, please. Okay, let's start. A few words about the topic of my presentation. Why did I choose it? Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear.
I can't hear you.
Oh, you cannot hear us?
Yes.
And I'll ask our monitors to send you the link of the YouTube presentation. So maybe there you can also you can see and hear us better, maybe. So please, Mateus or Elena, maybe. So they sent the link. I will send it to you, to Danila. Perhaps Danila can send the link to you, Arina. If you cannot see our chat in the stream.
Yes, I see it. Yeah, now I'm seeing it.
Okay.
Yes. Good.
Oh, good. So maybe you can follow along by looking at there also.
Yes. Oh. Okay. Good. Yes. Now I'm seeing my presentation.
Excellent.
On YouTube. So, okay, and then, so about the topic of my, hello?
Yes, we hear loud and clear.
So the topic of my presentation arose from my personal experience working with the text. This treatise on the sacrament, which I will discussing today, serve as a key, the primary source for my PhD dissertation, which is devoted to the study of ideas about the soul in the late medieval German literature. And while studying this text, I encountered an important question. How can I determine the historical and philosophical context of my research? With whom should I compare the teachings on the soul reconstructed in this treatise? And where should I draw the boundaries of the tradition? So I think if you want to explore an author's ideas on a particular questions or problems, it is essential to understand the environment in which the text was created and the audience for which it was intended, and who had the author already read and whom did he rely on, and so on. And answering these questions is aided by understanding the structure of the written sources itself and how it fits into the book culture of its time. Now I need the next page of my presentation. Before I move on to the main topic of my presentation, I would like to illustrate this problem with the following example, namely the translation of Aristotle's treatise on the soul. I came across this text by chance while searching for the late medieval treatise on the soul written in German. And it appears that this is the only known large fragment of Aristotle's on the soul in German translations. While individual quotations were widely circulated, a fragment of this size seems to be unique. Then the next slide, please. As you can see, the treatise is surrounded by astrological text, a treatise on divination by the phases of the moon, and so on. Naturally, the question arises, how did all these texts end up together? Why, for whom? Today, such a combination of texts would be unthinkable. And this example shows how differently the text was read and understood. So for a medieval reader and compiler of collection, this arrangement made perfect sense. I have not yet conducted in a deep study on this text, but it's known that first, in the Middle Ages, Aristotle was often regarded as a magician or a predictor. And the second, there is a treatise called Secretum Secretorum that's attributed to Aristotle, which also contains a section on the phases of the moon. So in general, when studying a text, it is important not only to focus on the text itself, but also to pay attention to reading context. Now I will move on to my presentation, and I need the next slide. here's the outline of my presentation. So I would like to divide my presentation into following parts. First, I will briefly discuss the features of the late medieval book culture. Then I will turn to the presentation of the text itself, how it can be read, considering the text in its pure form without reference to the manuscripts. And next, I will discuss the manuscripts themselves. And finally, I will show what studying the manuscripts has revealed to me, the new insights I have gained and how I can apply them in my studies. I'm trying to show how knowledge about the source can sometimes change the strategy of research. And on a particular question, in my case, the reconstruction and the study of the soul in these treatises. Then the next slide, please. Book culture. Medieval book culture is a huge topic, but today I'll just focus on the main points that matter for my research. In 14th and 17th centuries, a lot changed in how books were made and read. Knowledge became the more democratic, the new ways of producing, sharing, and reading texts come to this time, this epoch. First, books started to have secular readers and patrons. They were merchants, lawyers, scholars, even nobles. Some lay people even visited monastic libraries. And the second thing, books began appearing in the vernacular languages, not just in Latin. People were interested in more guides, in moral guides, chronicles, poetry, and mystical writings. And it was also a time of translations of philosophical works and the Bible. Third thing, universities and monasteries were central to copying and exchanging text. One manuscript could contain different texts, notes, and extracts, like a mini intellectual ecosystem, where texts were constantly adapted and reused. Finally, the books themselves changed. Then I need a next page of my presentation. In the late Middle Ages, miscellanies and composite manuscripts became especially widespread. These types of codices gathered different kinds of writings, something by different authors, copied in a different time and even in different places. A miscellany is a miscellany is a manuscript that brings together a variety of texts, religious, moral, or even practical, in one volume. The key thing about a miscellany is diversity. Usually, a compiler or scribe chooses the text with a certain purpose in mind, for example, moral instruction, spiritual reading, or personal study. So, in one manuscript, you could find a sermon, a short romance, a few prayers, and lectures notes, all in the same book. The second, there is another type, the composite manuscript. This happens when separate booklets or quires originally made independently are later bound together. This could be because of owner wanted to keep several small texts together, or library combined unrelated materials for convenience. So while a miscellany is usually planned for as a compilation, a complete manuscript grows over time. It's more about the physical history of the book than an intellectual plan. Knowing about these types of manuscripts is really important. It helps us to understand how medieval books were structured and gives us the context we need to study any particular work. Then I need a next slide. Compilations and mosaic treatises. When we study medieval text, we often come across two types, compilation and mosaic treatises. Both types reflect the ways in which knowledge was collected, organized, and transmitted through different, so they differ slightly in purpose and structure. About the compilation, it is a text brings together several shorter works or excerpts from different authors into one volume. They were usually made for practical purpose, like teaching, preaching, or scholarly reference. Compilation often focus on related topics such as philosophy, theology, or moral guidance. The compiler might add notes or comments to connect the pieces and to give their overall interpretation. Today's world, compilation can have a negative connotation, but in the medieval culture, it was completely normal and valuable. Mosaic treatises are a bit different. They more like a patchwork. They collect material from different sources in a less organized way. The pieces might not be fully harmonized, but together they create a bigger picture, like a mosaic. Mosaic treatises often preserve different viewpoints, show debates, and help us to understand how ideas moved across regions and generations. As an example, I've used a page, as you see, I hope, I've used a page from an anonymous treatise that I'll now talk about in more detail. Then I need a next slide. Now I will move on to the main focus of my presentation and research, the treatise on the Mass or Sacrament. This is a fairly significant treatise for the history of German spiritual literature, but for some reason it was overlooked for a long time. When I began researching this treatise, I discovered that it had hardly been studied, and the information about its copies was neither organized nor fully accurate. Due to the fact that the treatise has been scarcely studied, information about its manuscripts copies is not systemized. For example, the Marburger Repertorium lacks cross-references, and in various catalogs the treatise is listed under different titles. In catalogs, it appears under the title as a mystical treatise on the Mass and its effects in the loving soul, treatise on the Old Sacrament and Eucharist and other names. But in the Bavarian catalog, where I first found this text, it is listed under this title, Mystical Treatise on the Mass and its Effects on the Soul. It comes from Bavaria and dates to the late 14th century. The treatise consists of two parts, a treatise on the Eucharist and a treatise on the interpretation of the Mass. The image of the Madonna on the right side is not accidental. I'll explain this in more detail later. Then I need a next slide of my presentation. The anonymous treatise on the sacrament and the history of the Church. The mystical treatise has never been critically edited, but it has appeared in scholarly literature. The first researcher to pay attention to it was the Munich theologian Joseph Bach. He speaks about this treatise in his monograph Meister Eckhart, der Vater der deutschen Spekulation. Meister Eckhart, a father of the German speculation. And he listed the treatise among important anonymous works influenced by the ideas of the Eckhart. Bach briefly outlined its main themes and included key passages translated into modern German. The main idea, according Bach, of this treatise is deification of the soul and the significance of the Eucharist. The next mention comes from Adolf Franz. It is a medievalist and church historian. Franz describes this text as a mystical ascetic work about the Mass and its effects on the loving soul. And the third researcher was Kurt Illing. He also studied this text. In his book Albertus Magnus Super Missum Treatise in the Middle High German translations, he focuses on the second part of this treatise, the commentary on the Mass. Illing identifies that it is a free translation of Albert the Great's double treatise on Eucharist into Middle High German. And Illing explains that this treatise was strongly influenced by Albert Super Missum. The author used Albert's work as a main source. That means about half of this text comes directly from it. Albert's commentary already has a mystical tone, especially about the Eucharist and the believer's union with Christ. The author of the mystical treatise adapted these ideas to his own goal, showing the Mass as a moment for the soul to unite with Christ. Some of Albert's Latin passages become a bit unclear in translation, but they are rewritten to support the treatise's central theme, the union of loving soul with Christ. Then I need the next slide of my presentation about the content of the treatise. The text can be divided into several main sections. Oh, yes, I can see. I can see it, finally. The text can be divided in several main sections, all connected logically. The first part is an introduction dealing with the doctrine of emanation, doctrine of forms, and doctrine of images. The second part describes the union of the human soul with God through Christ in the sacrament of altar. The third part is devoted to gifts of the Mass, or morning gifts. So 6 gifts of the soul, 6 gifts of the soul of Christ, and then 6 gifts of the soul of Mary. The fourth part focuses on the illumination of the soul in the sacrament. It is an interpretation of the book of Revelation, and the human soul is described in this part as being illuminated by God, compared to an apocalyptic woman, whose head is crowned with a wreath of 12 stars. And the last part of this treatise devoted to signs of the inner life. Then I need a next slide. Thank you. Remarks by the author on the structure and content on the treatise. All scholars point out that the text contains many borrowed quotes and references to philosophy and theologians. This can make it seem like a treatise is a compilation or even a mosaic text. But the compiler's own comments show that it is an original work by the author, even though it uses many sources. So the treatise includes several remarks by the author that helps us to understand both its structure and content. The author often points back to early sections using phrases like as previously stated, and now I have briefly explained, or moreover I say, and this shows he carefully organized the text and wanted to guide the reader to step by step. And there is a particularly interesting passage in which the author describes witnessing an ecstatic state experienced by one of brothers of his order while receiving the sacred gifts. So then I need a next slide. Insight gained from the text. In my research on this text, I was able to identify some important observations. First, I found that the text offers a unique interpretation of the book of Revelation, especially Apocalypse 12, 1, 3, 4. Usually the woman clothed with the sun is understood as Virgin Mary or as the church. But in this text, the author uses this image to describe the soul in the sacrament of the Eucharist. He combines Bible's commentary with the doctrine of Pseudo-Dionysius and creating a distinctive approach. The light that the soul receives or is clothed so it is divided in 12 rays, and this rays representing the light of the Trinity, and 9 representing the light of angels through the steps of the divine hierarchy. Second, I need the next slide. Second, I identified the influence of Meister Eckhart in the treatise. While some scholars like Joseph Bach only noted that the text comes from Eckhart's circles, I showed how the author specifically used Eckhart's ideas. He draws on Eckhart's ontology, teaching on contemplation and the idea that the human soul is like a Mary, capable of the birth of God in its depths. So this is the only second known text in the text to combine Eckhart's text that combine Eckhart's teaching on the birth of God in the soul with reflections on the Eucharist. And I also show that the author does not just use Eckhart's ideas in general, but relies on specific works, including Sermon 12, the treatise on detachment, and the commentary of Genesis. The quotations are not always word for word. They are adapted and transformed to fit the author's own argument and style. So I won't go into details now, but I have wrote an article on this topic where I show in detail how the author transforms Eckhart's quotations. And after discussing the insights gained from reading the text, I will now turn to the manuscripts to highlight their features and what they reveal about the transmission and reception of this work. Now I need the next slide of my presentation. Oh, I need a next slide, please. No, I didn't. I don't see it. Okay. So it's like the title of the slide is Anonymous Treatise of the Sacrament and Manuscript Overview. Okay. The codicological and paleographical analysis shows that the anonymous treatise on the Mass survives. Yes, survives in at least 5 late medieval manuscripts. And they were produced in southern Germany between late 14th century and 16th century. The number of copies, their locations, and their origins indicate that these texts attracted attention across different intellectual circles. The first part of the treatise, the section of Eucharist, started here. So my PhD was especially popular and appears in all 5 manuscripts. And now I will talk a little bit more about each copy. I will try not to go into codicological and paleographical details, but rather highlight the most notable information for my research. Then I need a next slide about Codex CGM 89. Now I would like to, thank you. Good. Now I would like to turn to one of the key manuscripts, this Codex CGM 89, that held at the Bavarian State Library in Munich. This is the earliest surviving copy of the text, created around 1375. The parchment codex consists of 70 folios, although several folios at the end are missing. The text in this codex is written in the Bavarian dialect, and the manuscript was produced by 2 scribes. In terms of decoration, the manuscript is plain. No ornamentation was added, although spaces were left for small initials, which were never executed. Interestingly, there are pencil marks on the front cover and folios 72, 73, 98, and page 146 that readers indicate that shows that readers interacted with the text actively over time. So this codex, or this manuscript, it has simple layout and modest format, indicated it was likely intended for private study rather than for public display. So then I need a next slide about the manuscript features. Thank you. What insights about the text can the manuscript itself provide? This manuscript is written in Bavarian, although some pages contain words that are not fully diphthongized. This suggests that the scribe, or perhaps even the author, may have come from outside Bavaria, because diphthongization occurred earlier than in other parts in Bavarian than in other parts of Germany. The number of errors in the text indicates that this is not an autograph, and mistakes like these are common when a text is being copied. This is also a large quotation in Latin used as epigraph, but every word in this quotation contains errors. This shows that the scribe may have struggled with material that was unfamiliar to them. by looking at where the spaces for initial were left, we can see which parts of the text were considered the most important. For example, one of these initials was meant to mark the section with the interpretation of the book of Revelation. And they also help to highlight the logical section within the text. This manuscript shows clear signs of use, indicated that readers interacted with it actively. Then I need a next slide about pen trails in manuscript. This manuscript does not contain philosophical marginalia, yet it still reveals fascinating traces of use. One of its most interesting features is the presence of pen trails made by unknown hands of the 15th century. There are short notes added directly into the manuscript and completely unrelated to the text. For example, on the cover, there is a beginning of Cato's Distichs, book 2nd. Do not take dreams seriously, therefore human mind formulates what it desires. So this text, Cato's Distichs, were among the most widely used Latin learning tools in the Middle Ages. So this means that the text was once in the hands of someone who studied Latin. And there are also legal statements such as, "At your service, dear Lord, I let you know that," or "I, Adelhard Leuckart of Schneuzgard, openly acknowledge that this is later all claims I have had towards the inheritance." And then I need a next slide. And these manuscripts contains also even personal messages. For example, "With my kind regards, dear brother-in-law, thank you for sending me the trousers. They are now in my possession." So, it can be assumed that this manuscript was once in the hands of lay people, not just clerics. And the second, the manuscript was not considered particularly valuable by its owners. Unfortunately, I can't see my presentation. So, yes, I need the next slide yes. Then I need the next slide after the man with trousers. Then manuscripts from Tegernsee Abbey. Yes, thank you. Right. A completely different attitude toward this text is shown by context of its reception. One of the main center for the reception and dissemination of this treatise was the Tegernsee monastery, one of the most important and influential center in southern Germany, in Bavaria, at that time. In 1426, Tegernsee became the center of the so-called Melk reform. The monastery worked closely with the University of Vienna and helped spread German language literature. Until the middle of the 15th century, the abbey did not have any books in German. But later, interest in the vernacular text grew, and by the end of the century, the library had more than 100 manuscripts and early printed books in German. And these codices belongs to the very first German language books of Tegernsee library. It's also known that two of them CTM 78 and CDM 839 were produced in the monastery scriptorium. These codices are well-known manuscript collections. And then I need a next slide of my presentation about a codex CTM. Thank you. About CTM 851. It is a typical late medieval miscellany of devotional texts. In these large composite codex, the anonymous treatise on Mass is preserved in its entirety. So, two parts of the text is in this manuscript. The date, this is the only known. So it is the only known manuscript where the treatise survives completely, including the first part, which deals the significance of the Eucharist, and the commentary of Mass after Albert the Great. Notably, that this manuscript was once owned by women from Munich, and in 1488 it was donated by her to the Tegense monastery. Then I need a next slide of my presentation about Codex 778. Codex CGM 778 contains several anonymous mystical treatises, the works and works of significant medieval authors. As I said, the manuscript was for the most part produced in the scriptorium of Tegense Abbey. The mystical treatise I focus on appears at the beginning of the codex, and it is followed by Meister Eckhart on detachment, and a short fragment attributed to John von Sterngassen and another anonymous Eucharist text. This text, this manuscript is decorated with small initials, some shaped like fantastic creatures, for example, a small dragon. So then I need a next slide of my presentation about Codex CTM 839. The manuscript mainly contains spiritual text. Among the most important are treatises on the Passion by Henry of St. Gallen, Meister Eckhart on detachment, a fragment of mystical work by John of Sterngassen, some sermons by Tauler, and conversation with Mary on the page by Pseudo Anselm of Canterbury. The mystical treatise on the Mass is in the first part, right next to the Eckhart on detachment, and the text of John von Sterngassen. Unlike CTM 778, here the trio is complemented with a fragment of the Hugo of Balma text translated by Bernard von Waging. According to Christian Bauer, the history of this manuscript is very easy to follow. In 1478, a lay brother, Jadorus, copied the first 14 quires gathering text and prayers about the Eucharist. The main part were so the main part has this mystical treatise. And the other two texts in this group, Eckhart on detachment and John von Sterngassen work, don't really relate to this treatise itself. They were simply copied from a lost original, the same source used for the CGM 778 manuscript. So then I need a next slide for my presentation. Taking the manuscripts treatise on sacrament as a part of the triple. It is interesting to see the repetition of the textual triplet with Meister Eckhart on detachment in the center. Bauer points out that all three texts are placed in very different functional contexts. As he notes, the arrangement is intentional. Neither manuscript feels like a random collection of text, even considering the size of the pages. The earlier large format manuscript, CGM 778, was created as a single unit, and it contains are linked by the similarity. In contrast, CGM 839 is a smaller mixed collection bringing together texts of different purpose and origins, mystical treatises, catechisms, meditative and instructive works, and different genres like treatises, sermons, dialogues, prayers, and sayings. So in this manuscript, the connection between text is mainly thematic, not formal. So, in the first manuscripts, 778, the texts are grouped together because of their similarity in content. They are thematically and conceptually close, forming a coherent unit. In the second manuscript, the texts are grouped by purpose. They are different works of various genres and origins, treatises, sermons, and so on, but they are united by a common thematic or functional goal, such as a spiritual guidance or mystical reflection. Then I need a next slide of my presentation. The anonymous treatise on the Mass is an Eckhartian text. My more detailed study shows that the connection between Eckhart's text and the mystical treatise is much closer than previously thought. This also helps explain why these works appear together in the Tegernsee collections. The treatise not only reflects Meister Eckhart's ideas, but also incorporates passages directly from his work, also from On Detachment. The fact that these texts appear together in a single manuscript indicates that medieval readers did not see the anonymous treatise on Mass as independent work, but rather as a text in the Eckhartian tradition. In this way, the treatise was understood within the context of spiritual practice and mystical thought on that time, and was associated with Eckhart's authority on contemplation and inner ascent to God. Then I need a next slide of my presentation. Tegernsee Abbey and Nicholas of Cusa. Tegernsee Abbey also holds a place in the history of philosophy because of Nicholas of Cusa wrote a treatise on the vision of God, specifically for the monks of this abbey. In 1452, he visited the monastery in person and presented the text along with an icon. This fact can also be taken into account when studying the treatise, especially considering the Nicholas of Cusa visit took place long before the copies of the treatise were made. So I need the next slide my presentation, parallels the anonymous treatise and vision of God. Considering this fact, the context for studying the philosophical and mystical themes present in the anonymous treatise on sacrament can be somewhat expanded. A brief note on Nicholas of Cusa. In this work, on the vision of God, he develops ideas from Dionysius the Areopagite on mystical theology and reflects on the ascent to God through ignorance, or via ignota. The central message of the work is that direct union with God is possible, but it cannot be reached through ordinary rational knowledge or philosophical reasoning. Even though the mystical anonymous treatise on the sacrament was written before Nicholas of Cusa, it contains ideas that resonate closely with Nicholas of Cusa III. Some key parallels include ascent through ignorance, so the path to God is experienced mystically rather than understood rationally. The role of intellect and will. The intellect is essential for spiritual ascent, but the will guides the soul toward love and devotion. And the third thing is the topic of contemplation of God. The author emphasizes that the focus is not on the mystical union with God, as mystical death or dissolution in God, but on the very act of contemplation and vision. This is conveyed allegorically, for example, through the image of the woman clothed with the sun, representing the soul's inner transformation, which allows it to behold God. The treatise on the sacrament also quotes the same passage twice from the Gospel of Luke. This is a passage, rejoicing in spirit of Jesus Christ. He said, I confess you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that you have hidden these things from the wise and prudent and revealed them to the little ones. In short, the treatise teaches that the path of God lies not in intellectual reasoning, but in supra-rational contemplation and devoted love. So then I need a next slide for my my presentation about CGM 4373. And finally, it is the latest copy of the treatise in terms of a date. It was created in 16th century. It most likely originates from a Dominican women's convent. The text is preserved by a description in which it presented as a book that speaks of the most magnificent and beautiful things concerning the most revered sacrament. It's incomparable in dignity and great clarity. Here too, it can be seen that treatise appears alongside a treatise by Eckhart, and as in the manuscript from Tegense, the codice contains only the first part of the treatise, that is the treatise of the Eucharist. Well, I will conclude here and move on to the closing remarks of my presentation. And it's the last slide of my presentation conclusion. So, through the study of manuscripts and their reception alongside internal reference within the text, it becomes possible to reconstruct the intellectual environment in which this work circulated. Considering the text within the context of the book culture rather than in isolation, it leads to important insights about its transmission and use. My research has shown that the author borrowed ideas from Meister Eckhart writings to a far greater extent than previously assumed. The affinity between the anonymous author and the Eckhart is further supported by manuscript evidence in several medieval codices, namely in CGM 778, CGM 839, and manuscript from the 16th century. The treatise appears in these manuscripts alongside Eckhart's works. This text can also be situated with the intellectual tradition of the Tegernsee monastery and in the context on the influence of Nicola of Cusa. So this case confirms that the text should be understood as a part of a living practice of reading, transmission, and transformation of ideas, rather than an isolated work. Thank you for your attention. That's all.
Thank you very much, Arina, for this very insightful presentation. We appreciate it a lot, and also we hope we can see you maybe here in person. It would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We might have a time for perhaps one question. If somebody from the audience would like to ask a question, I don't know if Alexandre will allow due to the time frame, but if anyone has any question, please, now is the time. Danila says he has many questions. I'm not sure about that, Danila. If we can have many questions, but please feel free to ask at least one.
Hello. First, thank you very much for the presentation, Arina, and thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, William and Warda. So I have just one question to Stephanie first. A very short question, and it could be a short answer, right? So it's difficult to give a short answer on that, but what's the nature of that redaction by the author? Was it just Christine herself? Did she just correct the scribal errors, or did she add some new passages, glosses, or any new meaning to what she wrote?
Respondo agora? Tá. There are various things she do. She corrects when either P or R, they forgot something, or they put something that's not supposed to be there, or she just puts ink over the text that she afterwards thought, nah, don't want it that anymore. So she do all of that. Correct, adds, take out, all of that.
Got it. So they just copied the text. She didn't dictate anything. Like she wrote, and they copied the written text. There was no
mostly, yes.
Thank you. And Arina, there are many questions here. Well, first, also, I'm just inquisitive if these different dialects, how can you actually see that in orthography, right? So, but these wouldn't be considered different redactions.
Yes, sir.
They just changed the
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And
For example, diphthongs are yes.
Right.
Sorry.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. And another. Also, you mentioned these. This German translation of Aristotle's on the soul, right? And perhaps I missed something. Like, was it also in these collections?
No.
With the
it's
treatise,
just
no.
It's I just found this book accidentally.
So they didn't mix up your treatise with.
Yes, it's just an example of this of book culture.
So because sometimes you can encounter probably a mix of all sorts of things, but here these are collections already, right? So would you consider your treatise as this mosaic treatise, as you called it, or
yes, but it has an author, because this text had clear structure and logic and sections of the text, and the anonymous author describes, and so he gives comments for his work.
Thank you very much. I don't want to occupy the whole speech, so if anyone else would like to ask things, because clearly there are lots of questions to all the talks. So thank you, and thank you once again. This was all this was absolutely fascinating. Artur.
Yes. Anyone else has questions? So there is Andrea Rodriguez is asking, thank you, Dr. Simonian. If I understand correctly, the treatise you discussed comes from a compilation. Could you please also talk about the other type of manuscripts from that area, the mosaic manuscripts?
So,
yes, Arina, did you hear the question?
No.
So it's from Andrea, and he's asking if I understand correctly, the treatise you discussed comes from a compilation. Could you please also talk about the other type of manuscript from that era, the mosaic manuscripts?
So should I explain about mosaic manuscripts more clearly? They consist of different fragments of text, for example, Augustine and Bible text, and so on. It is a type of a technical composite of text.
So is it the same stuff that we call florilegia, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I do have a short question to Arina, if I may. Arina, I'm very interested in hearing about the transmission of Dionysius Pseudo-Areopagita's text. So if you can talk to us more about it. How was the transmission? Because the text was translated into Latin at some point, and how was this actually used in the manuscript that you studied?
So there is only some passages from the works of Dionysius Areopagite, and I don't know is there any complete translation in late medieval German spiritual literature of the works of Dionysius. So maybe the author of the text had made these translations by himself. But it is not the topic of my research. That's why I can explain it more clearly.
Just one suggestion, if I may. Right. Presumably, it's likely that Pseudo-Dionysios was translated from Latin in this case, rather than from Greek, I would presume, right? And also there are several authors mentioned in these collections that you mentioned, like Bernard of Clairvaux, for example, right? Who, and if do I understand correctly that they are all in Latin, in German there, right? There are no Latin texts in these collections, in these codices.
Yes, yes.
Right? So
only some passages from Bible, for example.
In Latin, right?
Latin, yeah. In principle, just a small passages from Latin, like some words from Luke or from Colossus.
Got it. Thank you. Right.
Thank you, Arina. I have a question for Stephanie, but it's just like a curiosity, to be honest. Have you had the opportunity to see the manuscripts in person yet?
No, unfortunately not yet. I'm planning on going to France to do that, but only by images.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, actually, if I may, because I don't know anything about the manuscripts of Christine, so what's the state of research here? At what stage are the editorial projects, and what's your part in this? Is it all?
So, editorial projects are very little at this stage. The translations are more the topic. They are translating her works to English. We are trying to translate her works to Portuguese. I'm part of a project that is starting a little bit, not the whole book, not all the books, but parts of her books, to at least start something here in Brazil. But I think we have almost all of them. At some point, either translated to modern French or have a critical edition or a translation to English. We have almost all of them. I'm not remembering anyone that's not. But they are of difficult access. For us here in this side of the Atlantic, it's very difficult for us to find those books, physical or otherwise. So sometimes I find it easier to go to the manuscripts because almost all of them are digitized. I believe I have one of the ones that I'm wanting to use as in my research that was handwriting by her. That's not fully digitized yet. And that's one of the things I'm thinking of doing or helping or something, or at least transcribing it. I don't know. It's a project that's not in the paper yet, but anyway. But like the Library of France, BNF, almost all of them are there, either there or the Royal Library in Brussels. You have half there and half in France. One or two are in like small libraries in the countryside of France, and those are the ones that are not fully digitized yet. But yeah, that's it. She wrote about so many topics. She started with poetry, and then she did plenty works of for teaching women at her time, defending women. But she also wrote politic works. She wrote a biography of King Charles V. She wrote a book utilizing the metaphor of the body politic. She wrote a book that's my main study subject about war. It's a war manual, like Vegesius. She uses Vegesius as a source a lot of times. She wrote a book about peace. That small text I showed you is about a letter she wrote to the Queen Isabel de Bavière, urging her to stop the conflicts between the dukes that were starting a civil war back then. She wrote a lot of things about that.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Well, in this case, I would like to thank every one of our speakers. It was a lovely morning to have you all here with us, even though it is online. But it was great. I suppose I can say in the name of all of us that we learned so much. Thank you very much, and I will welcome you anytime you would like to come to visit us in person. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, I bid you farewell. Bye-bye.